Hello, this is James Graff with Advisors Mortgage Group. I'm here to bring you the business news of the day. A study of 3.1 million workers at 26,000 companies worldwide found that the average workday lasts 48.5 minutes longer than before the pandemic. The numbers of meetings has increased about 13%. That's brought to you by Bloomberg.com. Wine producers in France's Eastern Champagne region say that they've lost an estimated 1.7 billion euros, $2 billion in sales for this year. About 100 million bottles are expected to languish unsold at year's end, brought to you by the Associated Press. The Justice Department may seek civil and criminal penalties of as much as $18.1 billion against a bankrupt opioid maker, Purdue Pharma. The Department of Justice, DOJ, says $10.4 billion was taken out of the company from 2008 to 2019, including $4 billion that went to the Sackler family. That's brought to you by the Wall Street Journal, which is controlled, I believe, by Rupert Murdoch's holding companies. Lord & Taylor, 194-year-old Lord & Taylor, the oldest luxury department store in the U.S., filed for bankruptcy last week. The chain's 38 locations have been closed since March. It's brought to you by the New York Times. PayPal added 1.7 million new merchants in the second quarter as more consumers move away from carrying cash. About 70% of consumers say they fear for their health when it comes to paying in stores. That's brought to you by Fortune.com. I'm not sure how to pronounce this. Huawei, that's how I pronounce it. Huawei shipped 55.8 million smartphones in the second quarter to overtake Samsung as the biggest smartphone seller in the world. China accounted for 70% of those purchases. It's brought to you by CNBC.com. The big news in the market is basically that Apple's unbelievable soaring prices and unprecedented dominance in the markets. Apple just had its best third quarter ever, according to CNBC.com. Despite widespread retail store closures and production disruptions, the iPhone maker, quote, blew away analyst estimates, unquote. The revenue up 11% year over year. Locked down consumers fueled online sales of iPhones, iPads, and AirPods, while the company's earnings from services, which include the App Store, have already surpassed, quote, its internal goal of $50 billion in annual sales, unquote. The announcement of a 4-for-1 stock split for investors at the end of August sent shares soaring. The fact that CEO Tim Cook had testified in front of Congress in a historic antitrust hearing a day earlier was quickly forgotten. We are now entering, quote, uncharted waters, according to Bloomberg.com. With the latest surge, Apple has topped IBM as the market's largest influencer in the past 40 years. Huge change, huge overarching epic of control of the tech markets. Its shares now account for 6.5% of the entire S&P 500. Big Blue in 1985 was at 6.4%. Quote, the world gawked 2 years ago when Apple's market value crossed $1 trillion, unquote. Now nearly $900 billion later, there's no sign of a slowdown as Apple benefits from a market in which investors have flocked to a few big winners. This year alone, with shares up 49%, Apple has added $570 billion in value, a number bigger than the whole market value of all but 4 other U.S. companies. That's some historic events there, really. Several historic events going on. We'll talk about the Congress hearing probably in another video. I have to get to more business news while I still can. In the media, Murdoch leaves the family business. This is a little bit, I think it's a little bit leftist leaning, but we'll read it. James Murdoch, quote, severed his last corporate link, unquote, to his father's, Rupert Murdoch, media empire last week, according to Vanity Fair. The youngest son of media mogul Rupert Murdoch resigned from the board of News Corp, the publishing arm that includes the Wall Street Journal, as I mentioned in other videos, or this one, and the New York Post, not the Washington Post, citing, quote, disagreements over certain editorial comment, unquote, and, quote, other strategic decisions, unquote. The breakup was, quote, months in the making, unquote. For the left-leaning, like I said before, I knew that was coming, left-leaning Murdoch, who, quote, gave up on changing News Corp from the inside. So he's, I hate to be giving my biased opinions, but I also believe that News Corp is leaning right. It should be going down the center, I think. Unbiased. You know, if you're going to give the news, you should be unbiased. Business news in particular should be unbiased. I believe the Wall Street Journal is now leaning right. That's my opinion. I shouldn't give it, should I? Okay, let's move on to even worse things. Kodak, pandemic contract under investigation. This is fascinating to me. Kodak is being investigated by the SEC over the circumstances surrounding a $765 million government loan, according to the Wall Street Journal. The one-time photography giant, which declared bankruptcy in 2012 and sold off most of its lines of business, announced it received the U.S. loan to produce drug ingredients on July 28th, sending shares from, get this, $2.72 to near $60. That's too much percentage for me to calculate. That's $3 to 60. It's 20-fold. The day before, Kodak chairman Jim Continenza had been granted 1.75 million stock options, which became, quote, instantly profitable after Kodak's loan became public. Listen carefully, this is more interesting. A premature release of public information about the loan to certain media outlets is also being questioned. Lots and lots of questions there. I cannot comment on that until it's further investigated. But it's a very interesting story. There's more to it. I will keep you up to date if I can. Airlines, bankruptcy for Virgin Atlantic, who I know is also releasing its 60,000 feet in the air. You can get to from New York to L.A. in 90 minutes. I believe it's now announcing that, which is weird to me. Bankruptcy for Virgin Atlantic. Virgin Atlantic filed for U.S. bankruptcy protection this week as more airlines floundered, according to Bloomberg. Two of Richard Branson's airlines, Virgin Atlantic and Virgin Australia, have collapsed as travelers, quote, shun flights to avoid exposure to the coronavirus, unquote. 4 U.S. regional airlines have also shut down, including ExpressJet this week. Virgin told, quote, a London court it was set to run out of cash next month, unquote, without a $1.6 billion rescue. Branson has offered to use his 74-acre private island as collateral for a loan. What other private islands are in the news these days? St. James, also known as St. Jeffreys, also known as Lolita Island, owned by Jeffrey Epstein. Anyway, that's a whole other topic, which is also in the news. We'll talk about it in a different video. Not business. Politics, maybe. Business. Boeing 737 MAX passes key hurdle. Boeing 737 MAX might return to the skies by the end of the year, according to the New York Times. Federal regulators reported this week that Boeing's proposed changes to the plane's design, flight crew procedures, and maintenance procedures, unquote, had successfully mitigated the issues responsible for fatal crashes in 2018 and 2019. Prayers go out to those people involved in that. It's very sad. Bothers me that companies making so much money and under contract by the U.S. government cause fatalities. I understand engineering does have its are holes. Nothing is perfect, but to have that big of a error, that's not engineering anymore. Engineers don't make those mistakes, really. Engineers make sure that those mistakes never happen. That's not engineering anymore. I can tell you, after studying engineering, that those are financial mistakes and oversight mistakes. Not paying enough to the engineers to make sure it doesn't happen. That kind of, I'm sorry, I'm editorializing. It's my opinion only, not reflected in any of these statements made by these news outlets. Okay. Tangent. After a 45-day public comment period, the agency will issue a final ruling. At that point, quote, Boeing can begin to make the changes and ready the planes for flight, unquote. However, several obstacles, such as pilot training requirements, remain before the plane is cleared for flight. So hopefully we're on top of this and no more deaths will be occurring and no one else will put their lives at risk. I'm not sure how they're going to reassure the public. That's my take on that. Anyway, sorry, my take. Let's go back to car makers. Learn the art of the drop. Luxury car makers are copying the playbook of Nike and Adidas, according to Bloomberg, facing, quote, the threat of obsolescence, unquote. With orders dwindling amid the pandemic, high-end car makers are turning to special edition releases with heavily hyped, quote, drops to build excitement. It's a way to drum up interest among car collectors for, quote, fast sports cars with enviable looks, the way the Air Jordan 11 25th anniversary shoe would for, quote, sneaker heads, unquote. Profits can be huge. Porsche is producing 992 copies of a, quote, heritage model 911 and charging $48,000 extra, quote, a number that's almost pure profit, unquote. Consumers can, quote, throw rationality out the window, unquote, for unique trim, meaning all the different things they make to make it look pretty, not affecting performance but affecting resellability. So you have to look at resale. Trim affects resale. So I don't know if there's any truth to that, saying that there's pure profit. Pure profit on the person that resells it, perhaps. I'm not sure. So a $450,000 Rolls-Royce Wraith, W-R-A-I-T-H, Wraith, quote-unquote, Kryptos, K-R-Y-P-T-O-S, Kryptos, priced $120,000 higher than the standard model, includes fluorescent light threads and paint patterns that form, quote, clues to a hidden message for owners to solve, unquote. So is there $120,000 value in that? That remains to be seen with the resale values. It may be more than that with resale values. Who's to say what is worth what when it comes to selling or buying extremely expensive items? We could go on and talk about how office life, not office lice, is changing. We could go on to talk about Tesla entering the SP 500. I think that's a good thing, good topic to broach. Basically, a Tesla-driven S&P 500 upheaval. Tesla's likely induction into the SP 500 is, quote, a big event for managers of index mutual funds and exchange-traded funds, unquote, according to Bloomberg and Business Week. This, with its fourth consecutive profitable quarter, the electric car maker recently met the favored index's requirements. That's another monument, another big milestone, rather. At a market cap of $277 billion, quote, Tesla would be the largest company in dollar terms ever added to the index. Again, history in the making. And the ripple effects could be considerable. With Tesla's share price at around $1,500 per share, managers of passive funds may have to sell $35 billion to $40 billion dollars of shares in the rest of the indexes companies, quote, to make a hole big enough, unquote, for Tesla to fit into. That's going to ripple the market. It's going to affect prices across the entire market for Tesla purchase to fit, right? What membership would mean for Tesla is not clear. Recent research has found that the lasting effect on share price after index inclusions, quote unquote, has been downward, unquote. Interesting. I could talk great length about this topic, one of my favorite topics. Many of my favorite topics. It's stocks entering the SP 500, the SP 500 itself, history of the 500, Tesla, fascinating stock topic. Could talk to you all week about Tesla. Anyway, good and of course bad. Nothing's perfect. Moving on, I'm going to move on to more mortgage woes at Wells Fargo. This will get its own video because we need to delve into this in depth. Mortgage borrowers in 14 states say Wells Fargo put them into forbearance without asking, said Gretchen Morgensen of NBCnews.com. Again, typically left-leaning if you look at the biases, according to several studies. Anyway, moving on. The CARES Act, C-A-R-E-S, CARES Act, allowed borrowers with government-backed loans to request forbearance on their payments for up to a year. But dozens of Wells Fargo customers say, quote, they have been forced into, unquote, the plans without their consent. Some believe that they got pushed into the program with a single press of a button on a Wells Fargo website. Quote, the button shows up. If you've been affected by COVID, click here, unquote. Another customer says that, quote, Wells Fargo employee insisted that she, quote, mistakenly, unquote, applied, unquote, for forbearance. So to be clear, she's claiming that mistakenly is a word that she's using in quotes. Let's read that again. Another customer says that a, quote, Wells Fargo employee insisted that she mistakenly applied, unquote, for forbearance. The forbearance is noted on credit reports and, among other issues, leaves the borrower, quote, stuck at Wells Fargo, unquote, and unable to refinance the mortgage at today's rock bottom rates. So I have to give a disclaimer that I work for Advisors Mortgage Group, and I'm not allowed to say disparaging things about other mortgage companies. Wells Fargo is in the mortgage business, so I am not giving the opinions of Advisors Mortgage Group. I am really not supposed to comment personally about Wells Fargo, which I will not. I'm simply reading what others have spoken and said on news media outlets, and I will be visiting that to see if it's even allowed for me to do this. So next, age discrimination rises in recessions. Older workers are getting culled, C-U-L-L-E-D, in the job market's quote-unquote massive rolling shakeout, unquote. This is according to Market Watch. New research has found that, quote, age discrimination rises hand in hand with unemployment rate, unquote. That older workers are often the first fired and last to be rehired. Economists at UC San Diego and the University of Georgia found that age discrimination suits rose dramatically alongside unemployment. They also analyzed the study of how likely employers were to call back applicants for an interview and found that each 1 point increase in the unemployment rate raised the gap between older and younger women's chance of getting called back by a startling 16%. And I think we're going to end our business news on that note. Something that doesn't get talked about too much, age discrimination, which is, of course, absolutely legal in the mortgage industry. Cannot discriminate based on almost anything except whether you're a U.S. citizen. That's important to mortgages. Everything else is forbidden to discriminate. Age, sex, religion, skin color, accents, country of origin, you name it. We cannot discriminate in the mortgage industry. And with that, I'm going to have to thank you for tuning in. This has been James Graff with a 20-minute mortgage minutes from Advisors Mortgage Group. And I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day. Thanks again for listening.